So the first thing we always say is, this is not about whether surrogacy is good or bad. This is about the question, how can surrogacy be practiced in a way that we could be proud of and positive about? And that's the first, thing you should take home. It's not about, some sort of a known, quality called surrogacy. It's about how you break this down such that the welfare and the well-being of all the people involved is taken into consideration, that the different perspectives are all being considered, and that it is not done in a process in which your triumph comes at the expense of somebody else's rights or safety or well-being being compromised. So we created what we call the ethical framework for surrogacy, which is on our website and might be one of your handouts. And we did that with the help of a group of surrogates who, until now, we have an advisory committee of surrogates. But by now we have surrogates on the board and in our team, and also by consulting with a lot of associations across the world, quite frankly, because surrogacy is being attacked from the right by conservatives who don't want us to be parents or are suspicious about why we want to be parents, and also from the left, quote unquote, from people who are concerned that we're taking advantage of women, and it is even defined by some of them as violence against women. Certainly terms being used such as trafficking, etc. So we had to articulate that to ourselves. And by articulating it, we thought of a lot of things we haven't thought before. And this ties into a lot of things you heard it the last day and a half, including the interesting conversation we had this morning about compensation, about what is altruistic, what is commercial, what is the surrogate getting wages, or is she working for us? Is she providing a service? So we had to articulate all these things in order to get connected to what we felt, as I mentioned before, in our guts. So I'll mention a few of those issues in a minute, but obviously, first and foremost, realize that they're all on our website, and we hope that you will read them a little further if you're interested. But so the first thing we did, as far as our first foray into advocacy, was what do we think are the conditions under which surrogacy can be practiced ethically. The second thing was trying to fight for more legal access to surrogacy, and that is including several states in the United States that up until recently did not have regulated or legally safe or compensated surrogacy allowed. So it is now, by the way, one of the last frontiers is Michigan, where the legislator flipped in the last election, and now there is really at hand the very likelihood that Michigan will be one of the last states that will allow compensated surrogacy legally very, very soon. New York came only 3 years ago. And that was one of the times when we had the most, thankfully, the most access to influence how the surrogacy reform, surrogacy bill that was written. And we're very proud about the fact that a lot of issues have been listened to and have been found their way into the New York surrogacy reform in a way that we feel is most conducive to protecting everybody's rights and well-being, etc. So the problem is that years ago, gay men thought that a lot of gay men just assumed they're not going to be parents. And as we and many other associations and society at large has moved to a reality where we can marry and we can form families much more easily than before, now we were facing with a new, very, very cruel situation, cruel reality, that it is legal, it is even socially acceptable more and more, but financially unattainable to more and more people. So, or to enough people. So, such that getting legal access to surrogacy and getting rid of some of the social barriers only left us at a point where we, as gay men, who require the most assistance in becoming parents by a surrogate, by an egg donor, an expensive medical process, ended up in a situation where very big parts of our community were just not able to afford it. And that is why we're, of course, as I said, we're providing financial assistance and some guidance about making it more transparent, etc. But we realize that there are a lot of financial obstacles that are systemic and that we can work to fight. And some of them have to do, once again, with things you've heard over the weekend. So all these things about insurances that are not covering your surrogate, or that a certain percentage of surrogates are such that you would need to buy extra insurance, even if you're lucky, and wait until the open enrollment and can buy the affordable care policies, etc. That's another cost, a big cost for you, and it's not necessary. So we're fighting to make sure that those exclusions and discriminatory policies will no longer be tolerated. You can't write off surrogacy-related expenses as a tax deductible income. We've initiated and we're part of a coalition that last year submitted a bill, I know it hasn't passed yet, to Congress. This is a federal thing, to allow for such deductions. It hasn't gone through yet, but we made some, good progress. We always look for regulatory, paths, or even ways to use lawsuits, or to get to some of these outcomes, given that legislation, certainly federal legislation, is the most difficult. So we're pursuing some of those tracks as well. And we're going to talk about it a little more in a few minutes, but we also, one of the major projects of the advocacy agenda we have right now is to redefine the concept of infertility. So infertility is currently defined by law in most places as a purely medical condition or disease. And we always felt that if there is, because remember, a lot of discussions that you heard today were about whether or not insurance will cover the surrogate, maternity and delivery, whether it's going to cover the newborns. But the reality is that almost always the insurance doesn't cover the IVF for us. So that is something we also, that is kind of like the ultimate frontier for us, because we feel that if there's insurance anywhere that covers IVF for a heterosexual couple that is defined as medically infertile, it should also cover it for us. And the term sometimes we use is structural infertility or status, and that thankfully has started, we were starting to move the ball on that one as well, as now there is a new definition of infertility that has been devised, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. We have a representative of one of these organizations, by several organizations, to include us. It's also already has been legislated in Illinois. So in Illinois, a gay couple is treated under some circumstances, which we can explore a bit today, but more tomorrow in a panel we have about coverage at work, can get free IVF as the same way that a couple that is medically infertile. There are bills right now in several states, including, you guessed it, California, that would achieve the same outcome. So that's an example, but also an important part of our advocacy agenda, because as I said before, we want to make sure that we feel, confident and proud about the way we become parents, but we also do not, cannot tolerate. I couldn't tolerate, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, the thought that some people have now traded, sexual orientation discrimination with social demographic, socioeconomic discrimination. that now that's what's preventing them from becoming parents. So this was my way of giving a quick introduction to what is advocacy for us. I should also mention there's a lot of work we do around stigma, and it is a different discussion we would have been having right now if we were talking in Europe, where the issues are a little different. But suffice it to say that this gives you a taste of the advocacy work we're doing and why it takes really, a community organization to tackle what you're doing right now beyond just the prescriptive checklists and tips we're giving you throughout this weekend.